Hello, everyone. Hello. Come on into the room and get settled. We are doing a special Friday happy hour. I'm usually never here on Fridays. We're going to let Jill sing us out, and then I'll go ahead and get started in a minute. Hello. I am Mambo Soleil. I am cover mother of. Oh, pause. What's going on? Okay, there we go. That time. Hello, everyone. I'm Soleil. I am cover mother of Vision of Dawn Tour, founder and facilitator of the Charm School Mentorship Program. I am your weekly reader, and I'm a dope bitch straight up out of Oakland. Hello. Tonight we're doing happy hour. We typically don't do happy hour on Fridays. It's typically a Thursday thing. But I was conducting Rich Spirit, and we extended it an additional day. It's usually a 4-day process, but we did it for 5 days this time around. So that means that happy hour had to be rescheduled. So I hope that you guys are catching this live. If you don't get to catch it in real time, hopefully you have the opportunity to go back and watch the replay. As you come into the room, say hello. Just say hello. Introduce yourself. I like to know who's here so that I can engage in active conversation. I like this to be really interactive, okay? So there are two people that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so let me back up. A happy hour is a segment that I do where we come together and we talk about popular culture, okay? Same way you would get together with your friends after work for, in-person happy hour. This is where we come together and we kind of shoot the ish together and talk about pop culture over glass of wine, a little something to sip on if you have it. I have my red wine here. Hold on one second. Yeah, so I have red wine here with me tonight. So I will be sipping a little bit. If you have something to sip on, let us know what you're sipping on. If you are not sipping on anything, you just have water, tea, something a little bit more cozy, share that with us too. There's nothing wrong with being a sober girly, okay? So I wanted to talk about these two people, even though they are very separate examples, because I feel like they both overlap in terms of giving us something to think about. In terms of how there's a phrase that's become popular. It is a psychological term, but it's become popular over the internet, and that phrase is weaponized incompetence. Hello, Tiffany. Thank you for joining tonight. And so I want to talk about weaponized incompetence because I think the way that it has become popular within the zeitgeist is in the context of relationships, right? And there's a way that we can minimize this thing when we think about, a man who acts like he doesn't know how to wash the dishes, right? In order to pressure you into doing it, right? But weaponized incompetence can become violent. It can become extremely socially violent, and it can have massive ripple effects and impacts that leave negative impact over people's life. So that's why I want to talk about it. And I wanted to talk about it in the context of Clifton Powell and Tyra Banks because they're both really good examples of that, okay? Does everyone here know who Clifton Powell is? I'm going to be really honest. Until I saw the clip of him going off on that other young man going around, I didn't know what his name was. I recognized his face from a lot of Black movies and television shows. He plays a corrupt nigga and everything, like deeply typecasted. Very, very typecasted. From the time that he was in Rock till when he did the Friday After Next movie. Like, he is always typecast in everything he does. And he plays an angry man in everything he does. So I was not surprised when in the clip he showed up yelling and being angry. I didn't until I realized he was Pinky. Yeah. Um, so for those of you who don't know, there was an organization that put together a discussion panel with famous Black actors of multi-generational Black male actors. Multi-generational means all ages. For them to come together and have a discussion about why it is important for Black men to trust Black women. Okay? So I want you to consider that. It's an organization that is built on reproductive rights that put together this panel. So this is the context in which these men came together to have this conversation. I think it's important to note that because this conversation should not have taken on the tone and the tenor that it did, all right? So in the conversation where they're talking about Black women and their need for love, it comes out that Clifton Powell, who is 69, I believe now is 70. He should be 70 now. If not, he'll be 70 this year. At 69 years old, this man says he's just now in his big grown geriatric age learning how to love a woman, okay? Now, I want you guys to think about that. This man is an ex-husband. He was married. He has children, okay? Think about what it means for a man in their 70s to sit in front of people and say that he just in the last year of his life learned how to love a woman. And that the only reason why he learned how to love a woman is because he's with a woman that takes all of his abuse, all of his stuff, has been patient enough to deal with his cheating, and has not left him, right? And when another man in the group confronted him about that being wrong, that it's, kind of fucked up that men have this pattern of not waiting, not being decent, not being good men, and waiting until they are literally about to die, right? They're in their geriatric years. That's when they suddenly want to learn how to love. And has anybody stopped and thought about why that is? It's because they're literally about to die. And they don't want to be alone in death. Right? And when people started to, first of all, he cussed out the one young man that challenged him, right? And then when other people around the table started to challenge that notion of the lack of responsibility, he made so many excuses. He blamed it on slavery. He blamed it on the crack epidemic. He said this thing that really annoys me because it is sociologically and historically inaccurate, where he claims that welfare took Black men out of the home. If you're a person that has ever read a book, that argument will piss you off, okay? Because it's so historically inaccurate and untrue, right? But he had 10,000 excuses for why Black men should not and do not know how to love, while saying that Black women have an advantage around being loving and being caring and being able to love, okay? Now, how is that weaponized incompetence? I'll explain to you. Let's look at the definition. Weaponized incompetence is when you perform helplessness in order to shift labor or responsibility onto another person, okay? And men will do this a lot, right? Again, we think about it in the context of like a man washing dishes badly on purpose. He's going to leave the spaghetti sauce on the plate so that you get frustrated and go behind him. And not only do you wash the dishes, but you don't let him wash the dishes anymore, right? But what Clifton was talking about is a form of weaponized incompetence that is much more insidious and much more violent in its nature, okay? If men pretend like they just don't know how to love, they don't know how to be right, they don't know how to be good to a woman, then they get to never have to be good, never have to be right to a woman, right? And the blame gets shifted to women. Well, you knew he was a dog. You knew he wasn't right. All men cheat. So it normalizes the incompetence and the violence of patriarchy and misogyny in a way where it just seems like men are incapable of being good. They're incapable of exercising sexual discipline. They're incapable of thinking about the feelings of the women that they skeet in and make and create children in. They're just incapable, right? That's weaponized incompetence. And then the women whose hearts get broken, the women who get cheated on, the women whose psyche gets damaged. And then let's go even further. The women who catch STDs because the men are sleeping around. The women who children turn against them because their fathers aren't in the home. All that gets shifted. The blame gets shifted to the women. The labor gets shifted to the women. And the men, we have to just excuse it because it's systemic. They don't know any better. They don't know how to be good, right? They're lions. One of the things he said was that monogamy is not natural, which we know is a lie, because if it's natural for women, how is it not natural for men, right? Monogamy is socialized. In the same way that women can be socialized into being monogamous, men can be monogamous too, right? But weaponized incompetence is nothing more than a control strategy that is masquerading and disguised as an incapability. Okay? So this grown-ass man, who by his own admission has spent the majority of his adult life dogging out women, running over women, cheating on women, prioritizing his career over the care of his own family and the safety of his marriage, the sanctity of his marriage, by his own admission, he gets to pretend like it's not his fault because he just didn't know. He didn't know. He just learned how to love a woman. It's a lie. It's a lie. The way this man irritated my soul, I think he irritated a lot of our souls. I wish that men would speak up more, because a lot of men aren't they're not okay with what he said, but they're excusing it in ways that are really fun. That's one thing about men. Men will stay on code. No matter how bad the behavior of another man is, they will still stay on code. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's right. But we have to think about this in terms of weaponized incompetence, right? Because weaponized incompetence is not about the actual inability. The person has the ability to do a thing. They just don't want to do it. Weaponized incompetence is a form of avoidance. At its core, that is what it is. It's when somebody strategically will pretend that they can't do something, and it justifies their underperformance. So they never have to carry the weight of their responsibility. They never have to face the burden that they put on other people, right? And here's the thing, everybody can learn, everybody can improve, everybody can ask for help. If this was something that was impacting his career, I bet you he would shift it. I bet you if there was money attached to it, I bet you if there were a role attached to it, he would figure out a way to learn how to love, right? So it's disingenuous. It's a disingenuous lie, right? When you frame men as just naturally incapable of the emotional labor of being loving, it justifies their poor behavior. It justifies the violence that they commit against women, whether it's overt physical violence or whether it's the social violence, right? Think about men. We make jokes about how we have a granddaddy or uncle, or maybe our own fathers, that had a secret family across town. How is that not a form of violence? To abandon your child and your children and go take up and have a secret family that gets to have all of your attention, your resources, your love. And these children have to be without that. How is that not a form of violence? Right? Those are all forms of violence. I loved how Joseph Irwin called him on his BS. You don't get a cookie for identifying an emotion successfully. Yeah, absolutely. When we have this cultural narrative that men aren't good at feelings, that men aren't good at emotions, they somehow get to escape responsibility. And we know it's not true. If they weren't good at emotions, they wouldn't have them. He was very emotional during that conversation. The moment he got called out on his shit, what did he start doing? He started yelling. He started cursing. He started talking over people. He became very disrespectful. He acted like a wounded child. So one moment you're incapable of love, you don't understand emotions, that's a woman thing, that's a female thing. And then the second that somebody calls you on your behavior, you start to engage in expressing your own emotions. You're not incapable. You're not incapable. You just think that the people who lay with you are not worthy of love. And that is dangerous, and that is violent, right? When you say that Black women are better or they have a secret advantage in terms of love, you are also creating a language that justifies the exploitation of their emotional labor, right? And this is why so many men have this expectation that they can cheat on a woman, they can dog on a woman over and over and over again. And that if that woman does not take them back, if they do not accept those poor behaviors, that somehow it's a problem with that woman. It's not a problem with the man, right? Because men don't know how to be better. They don't know how to love. But because women are inherently loving, if they have a boundary, if they say no, if they hit capacity, then somehow it becomes a failure of the woman. That is weaponized incompetence. And we have to start having that conversation in the language of weaponized incompetence. It's never going to get better. If men don't understand that that is a deficit within them, and if men don't start holding one another accountable, we will never see improvement, okay? This is about ego preservation. Weaponized incompetence is about ego preservation. It's also about the ability to dominate another person. I'm getting what I need out of you without having to have any reciprocity in the situation. It's predatory. And it shows a disregard for emotional intelligence, right? Let's talk about Tyra, that fucking predator. Let's talk about Tyra, because Tyra should be ashamed of herself. I have not watched the documentary myself, the America's Next Top Model documentary. I've not watched it myself. I was there the first time. I was one of the people watching this saying, hey, this is fucked up. Hey, these bitches are in blackface. Hey, I don't think she can consent to sex if she's blackout drunk. See, there's this myth that we have that in the early 2000s, people were unaware and they didn't understand. No, people understood. It wasn't popular to understand. I remember being in college in 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004. I remember having difficult conversations with people. And I remember sitting across from folks and having them tell me I'm thinking too hard, or I'm doing too much, or my feminism is going to keep me lonely. I remember people saying shit like that to my face. There was no absence or lack of people who watched shows like America's Next Top Model and saw the problems with it. It just wasn't popular to be vocal. And I think we have to be honest, again, in terms of being intellectually honest, right? In terms of not weaponizing our incompetence, we have to stop lying to ourselves. We knew that the shit that happened in that show was wrong when it happened. We knew it was out of pocket then. The difference between now and then is that we were titillated, and I'm using we loosely, we were titillated by how wrong it was back then. Now we know that it's wrong, and we know that we can lose jobs, we can lose resources, right? Which is the only reason why people are so outraged by it now. But this is not about us. It should be about us. It can't be about us. But let's bring this back to Tyra. Tyra knew that the things she was doing then were wrong. That's why so many things did not make it into final edits. She knew it was wrong to look that black woman in the face and tell her to go back home to a dirty mattress where she sleeps on the floor with her child. She knew that that was classist. She knew that it was racist. She knew that it was fucked up when she said it. And that's why the lawyers came in the next day, and that's why she made it a point not to allow that part of what she said to make the final edit. If you didn't think it was wrong, why was it edited out? That's another way that people perform weaponized incompetence. Oh, it was the time. Everyone was doing it. We didn't know better. Yes, we did. We knew it was wrong then. There's a fucked up thing that people do where they try to act like they don't understand and they put things on a generation. Tyra knew those things were wrong then. And the only reason why she's feigning and weaponizing incompetence now is because it's impacting the money. It's the only reason. Tyra should have been ashamed of herself then, and she should be ashamed of herself now. Okay? Moments where criticism is framed as tough love, but the responsibility for the impact is deflected, have to be acknowledged. People know when they're speaking to somebody in a way that is socially violent. And a telltale sign, do they want somebody to speak to them that way? Tyra had no problem with all those girls were less than size 10s. Tiny little waists, 36-inch hips. All those girls were small. All of them were tiny. Even the ones that claimed to be plus size, they just had titties. And that's something that, and when you look at how many women who came into their adulthood or into their adolescence in the early 2000s, and you see how prominent eating disorders are amongst us, you should understand why. Because all you had to do in the early 2000s was have some hips and some titties, and people said that you were obese. Okay? That's insane. Those women were tiny. Tyra knew it was wrong to get on those women and call them overweight and call them fat and do all that stuff and let her colleagues call them that. Because a couple of years later, when she got on her talk show, what was one of the first things she got on camera and cried about? People calling her fat, right? Remember her in the bathing suit? Kiss my fat ass. If it was wrong when it happened to you, how is it not wrong when you did it to someone else? So pretending like you don't understand, pretending like it was just the time and you didn't know any better and you didn't understand the weight of your actions, that is weaponized incompetence. When you position yourself as misunderstood, rather than taking accountability for the impact you have over other people, rather than examining the role you have in harming other people, that's weaponized incompetence. I don't like it when people who are in a leadership position or in a position of power fake confusion when they're confronted, right? So we saw Clifton just go smooth, clean the fuck off and cuss people out for having the audacity to confront him. Tyra, the way she weaponizes her incompetence is that she just pretends to be confused. When people asked her about the young lady that was sexually assaulted, she pretended like she had never even heard that woman's name. Saying that's not what I meant to say, or I didn't know any better, or it was the time, or we didn't understand, that's a shield. That's a shield that people hide behind in order to not take accountability, to not be responsible for their actions, okay? And it's very, very dangerous. So when you look at this, Clifton is exercising it in a different way than Tyra, but they're both doing the same thing. They're both engaging in weaponized incompetence. They're both acting like they don't understand the weight of their actions, right? They're both going out of their way to protect their egos at the expense of other people and at the expense of having to acknowledge the violence that they commit over the lives of other people, right? Let's talk a little bit about the psychology behind it. Why do people engage in weaponized incompetence? Because they want to have control. They want to have control over not only getting other people to do their bidding, to do their dirty work, to take on excess labor, but they want to have control over their own image. They want to seem innocent. They don't want to be the bad guy, right? And here's the thing, sometimes you appear to be the bad guy because you won't take responsibility. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So saying I made a mistake, I want to do better, I commit to doing better moving forward, that's one thing. But acting like it didn't happen or minimizing it and blaming it on time, that's ego preservation. That's ego preservation. That's using your ego as a shield to not take responsibility. And why do people engage in this? What is weaponized incompetence rooted in? Well, one thing it's rooted in is a fragile identity. I have to be perfect. I have to be right. I can't be wrong. Wrong is bad, and I don't want to be a bad person. So let me act like I just don't understand or I don't know how to do a thing. Let me be so fragile and such a victim that people forgive me for not knowing how to do this thing or not being aware of this dynamic, right? It's also rooted in an entitlement, right? An entitlement of, I don't have to treat people good. Now, their entitlement comes from different places. Tyra's comes from the entitlement of, I'm a top model. I have skin in this game. I have legacy. People should bow to my advice and my wisdom, no matter how ridiculous it is. That's her entitlement. Clifton's entitlement is, I'm a man. And because men don't know how to love until they're almost 70 and about to die, people should have to accept my bad behavior, particularly Black women. Black women who have a higher capacity for love should absorb my labor. That's entitlement. That's entitlement, right? And there's a really particular way that this is predatory, especially when you think about the ways in which Black women are taught to overfunction and overperform. Please keep it going in the comments. I want people to have comments. I want people to ask questions. I want this to be much more participatory, okay? When you look at the ways that patriarchy rewards male incompetence in emotional spaces, this is particularly violent, right? The way that overfunctioners enable weaponized incompetence unintentionally. I think a lot of Black women, especially Black women who are attracted to men who want heterosexual relationships, will literally overperform. That's where pick-meism comes from, right? I'm going to overperform. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to be super, super dutiful, hoping that if I overwork myself enough, it'll get some sort of loyalty, even if that loyalty doesn't come until you're damn near at the grave, right? So it sets up a dynamic where one partner overfunctions while the other one is underfunctioning, which builds a lot of resentment, which is why men have this pattern of overworking their first wife, leaving them, and then claiming that the next wife is the one to taught them how to love, right? It's a hidden resentment. It's a way to hit under the belt. And accountability never happens. You just made it seem like the person that asked you to function like a regular adult is asking for too much. And then you run away and you claim that they're bitter while you get to start your life over with the next person, right? Let's talk about ways that we can recognize when people are engaging in weaponized incompetence in our own life. Or the ways in which we may be doing this, right? Because God forbid, I hope none of y'all do this to people and claim that you love them, but these are some signs, right? If you see somebody repeatedly messing up the same task or crossing the same boundary and claiming that they don't understand, that's weaponized incompetence, right? And I really want you, especially in your romantic relationships, to become aware of this, because some of you guys stay way too long in romantic relationships with people who don't respect you and with people who know that they can get over on you. If you explain a boundary to somebody and they pretend like they didn't know any better and that they're going to try and they continue to shit on that boundary, that's weaponized incompetence. It's not going to get any better. They're just going to wear you out until you get resentful. Okay? I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying it because it's a fact. And it's important. The sooner you recognize it and the earlier you recognize it, the easier it is for you to get away from people before they sick their claws into you or impregnate you or trap you into a lease or whatever fucking nightmare situations that you have to deal with somebody who does not love you, does not respect you. Okay? Another one, and it's related to the first one, is that they don't attempt to improve, right? Because that's the incompetent part. That's the weaponized incompetent part. You may not know how to do something well, but you're going to try to get it right. You're going to try to improve it. You're going to try to do better, right? But somebody who's engaged in weaponized incompetence is not even going to try. They're not even going to put forth the effort to try to do better, right? If somebody is constantly relying on you to fix things, right? Tyra sat there and created a lot of shame and embarrassment for those women. And it became their responsibility and their duty to go into other media outlets, including her talk show, and minimize and dumb down the impact of her actions over their lives. That's her expecting them to fix her mistakes. That's her expecting them to be responsible for her image cleanup. Okay? Another sign is of weaponized incompetence when people become super defensive when you correct them. Clifton Powell, when he got corrected, when that young man said, hey, it's not cool to put this kind of burden on Black women. Black women don't want to have to be responsible for your healing. They have their own healing journeys, right? Which is a very bare bones thing to say. Soon as he said that, what did Clifton do? He flipped out. He got defensive. He cursed the young man out. He blamed the crack epidemic. He blamed welfare. He blamed slavery. He blamed like at least 4 different, the CIA. He blamed at least 4 or 5 different social constructs and dynamics for his individual actions, right? That's weaponized incompetence. I don't know how to do this thing. I don't want to learn how to do this thing. And everybody else has some role and blame of why I can't do this, right? The last sign of weaponized incompetence, they act confused about expectations that have been clearly stated. I went through this when I left my former spiritual house. I set boundary over and over again about the ways that I was being verbally abused and spoken to. And people continually acted confused, like they did not understand why I did not deserve to be spoken to that way. And then when I finally snapped and I called somebody one bad word, everybody suddenly, oh my God, Soleil, how could you do this? I've been every bitch under the sun for 6 months straight. Every bitch under the sun. Why are you acting confused about the fact that my mama didn't name me bitch? But the second that I say something to you, the world is caving in. That was chosen confusion, which is, again, another sign of weaponized incompetence, right? So, again, we have these conversations so that we can apply them to our lives. How can we avoid this within ourselves? How can we avoid it within other people? You have to turn the mirror on yourself. Where do you pretend not to know something? Because not knowing it gives you the benefit of having other people fill in that gap, fill in that responsibility, fill in that space. That was one of the first questions that I got asked in my life coaching training that shifted my life. What are you pretending not to know? Where are you pretending to be a victim in your life because you don't want to take responsibility for that thing? If you can step back and ask yourself that question and turn that mirror on yourself, you probably won't end up being somebody who engages in weaponized incompetence, okay? Where do I default to that's not my thing? Where do you default to the understanding that you don't need to be responsible for something? This conversation of welfare taking Black men out of the house, it is a hotep talking point that burns my grits and makes my ass itch. Because that never happened. That never happened. That never fucking happened. And the welfare law that they're talking about, where there were checks to see if a man was in the house because it was understood that an able-bodied man should be bringing in an income and therefore they did not need welfare in household. That law, not only was it a state law, not federal, it lasted less than a decade. It was from 1962 to 1968. You are not going to sit here and tell me that that's 6-year state law took all black men out of the house. No, I think that it was a cultural thing where men did not want to get jobs. And it was easier for them to leave families and go start new ones than it was for them to take financial and social responsibility for the families that they started. And that's a cultural deficit that we need to take responsibility for. It will never heal if we continue to blame systems, okay? The last question we got to ask ourselves: where do I emotionally shut down instead of grow? All of us may have an area of life where we don't want to get no feedback. We don't want to hear nothing. Somebody say something to us and we flip out. We turn into Clifton Powell. We start cussing. We start coming up with excuses. If you have that area where you shut down and you're not confronting it, you may be somebody who is engaging in weaponized incompetence. So it's really important for you to pause, do your shadow work, ask yourself, where am I doing this, right? How can I step up and become somebody who is willing to learn? That's really, really important, okay? Because we think that the avoidance is ego protection, and it's not. It only stunts our growth. It only makes us spiritually and emotionally immature. And we don't end up having the kind of lives we want to have. We all know elders in our lives who the second they do what Clifton Powell did, that they want all this respect, they want to be seen as OG, and then the second you point out something about their behavior, they shut down and tantrum like a fucking baby. And we know those elders, they annoy the shit out of us, but what are we doing to make sure that we don't become those elders ourselves? What's the personal reflection that we're gaining in? How are we setting ourselves up so that we can engage in the type of growth that requires humility, right? Because accountability requires humility. Accountability cannot live in the same space as ego, as pride, as entitlement. It just cannot. I worked for the state of California, state of Arizona and California for 9 years. I know. And you probably never saw that shit, right? It never crossed it. Never saw a situation where welfare was ripping black men out of the home, because it didn't happen. It didn't fucking happen. It did not happen. That's why it is so historically inaccurate and violent. But yeah, I wanted to talk about these two things because I think we can get wrapped up in how silly both Tyra and Clifton look, but we have to have this conversation in terms of what's actually happening, which is weaponized incompetence. We can't fix it and make sure that we don't engage in it if we don't acknowledge it for what it is. And anytime you are pretending that you don't know how to do something that your grown ass knows how to do because you don't want to take the responsibility of it, and then you shift that labor onto someone else, and not only shift that labor onto them, but shift the responsibility of whatever violence or inconvenience comes with the additional labor, you're engaging in weaponized incompetence, which is a form of violence, okay? All right. I do have a reading that I'm offering, but it is a Friday night, so I don't know if people even want readings. But if there is anyone that wants an accountability mirror reading, go ahead and submit your love offering, and I'm happy to pull a few cards for you. You probably don't want it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wrap up by talking about some of the things I'm offering at the moment. There is 1 day left to use the code LOVE at checkout, LOVE, on my website to get 20% off of any order over $65. So if you've been wanting to get a reading, whether it's the Ancestral Life Path reading, whether it's a love and romance reading, or if it's just a general reading, now's a good time to book. I mean, again, the code does expire tomorrow night. So there's a little bit more than 24 hours, about 27 hours left to use that code. So go ahead to my website, book your readings as soon as you can. Use the code LOVE at checkout. Code expires at midnight on the 21st, okay? We just finished the current round of Rich Spirit. It was fucking dope. There were ladies, powerful, ladies who literally during the ritual manifested thousands of dollars while the ritual was going on. Just badasses, right? So it's going to be really exciting to see what comes into the lives of the other participants in the coming weeks. If you would like to participate in the next round, it's going to take place May 4th through the 7th. So go ahead and join the link at the link below now, so that way when we get started, you will have all the information. Nicole, I got your offering. I'll do a reading for you in just a second once I'm done with updates. This Sunday is the 222 activation portal, 222 portal. What does the 222 portal represent? It is an energy of alignment. It is an energy of spiritual cleansing. It is an energy of partnership. So it's a great portal for those who are trying to bring in financial stability and abundance, as well as those who are trying to call love into their lives, right? So if you would like to join me and my group for the 222 activation meditation group, which will take place from 4 to 6 p.m. on Sunday, join my Patreon. If you are a part of my Patreon at a paid membership level, you have access to this activation session. So we're going to do a group meditation that I've crafted to align with the energy. We're going to have a reflection section where I share some workings that you can do the night of the portal and the days after the portal to continue to gain from the energy. And then we're also going to do a group crafting session, and that's from 4 to 6 p.m. on Sunday. Again, join my Patreon, link below, at a paid membership level. Last thing, for the rest of the month of February, in honor of Black History, Ancestral Life Path readings are discounted at $85. So if you've never gotten an Ancestral Life Path reading, if it's been a few years since you've gotten one, and you just want to get a little bit of update around the energy with your ancestors, what they want for you in terms of your life path, want to refresh your understanding of how to navigate your altar, etc., book an Ancestral Life Path reading, okay? All right, Nicole is the only one who sent a love offering, so I will do Nicole's reading. If there's anyone else that would like the accountability mirror reading, go ahead and send your love offerings, and then when I'm done with Nicole's reading, I will read for you, okay? All right, let me pull this spread up. Ancestors, angels, ascended master spirits that walk with me, my elevated ancestors. What wisdom does Nicole need at this time about the role of accountability in her life? Where are the areas where she avoids accountability? What is the cost of that avoidance? How can she become in alignment? Any wisdom shared is deeply appreciated. Oh, last update. I am still doing interviews for Charm School. So if you would like to join the Charm School mentorship program, click the link below to join my intake group. Once you're in the intake group, I'll share the information with you about the program, as well as how to sign up for an interview. I interview people before they join my mentorship because I want to make sure that you're a good fit with the girls that are there. And I also want to make sure that you're actually committed, because I cannot tell you in the past how many people will join for like a week or 3 weeks and then be like, I can't do this. We don't have time for that shit. If I'm going to write out a whole syllabus and create a curriculum around you, you need to have your ass there. So that's why we interview first, okay? And I'm one of those people that actually does teach in my mentorship. So that's why I take it seriously. And that's why I'm really, really deliberate about who I let in. Okay. Where are you performing helplessness, right? This is going to help you identify the blind spot, right? Where are you not acting like you're not just that good at it? 5 of Cups. It's like, here, it's funny because so many of the readings I've done for you, Nicole, have talked about how your life is in a great place and you're in a very positive space and there's going to be forward movement. But I think sometimes you have a tendency to talk about yourself as though you're downtrodden, right? It's like an old narrative that you're just used to wearing, right? So in the area of life where you're performing helplessness, it's related to your mood, right? It's related to your past. You let your past loom a little too heavy, in a way that isn't even in alignment with where you are, right? In the position of what is the avoidance protecting, right? And this is meant to reveal the wound beneath or the fear beneath. We have the Ace of Pentacles. You are a naturally abundant person. We've talked about this. You attract opportunities, especially opportunities for money, very easily. So I think what you are protecting in the performance of that particular wound or helplessness is that if you are always depressed or broken, then you don't have to help people, which is crazy because you can just tell people no, right? If you appear like somebody who is less capable or who has less capacity or just even less resources than what you actually do, then you get to avoid being siphoned for help, right? And so I'm joking about just saying no, but it's like a way that you play small because you have been sucked off of so much, right? People have come to you so much for help and assistance. So it's like rather than just saying no, you would rather pretend to be broken, pretend to be stretched thin, right? And that's not helpful to you. It's not helpful to you. What does accountability look like? Just being honest about the fact that you don't fucking want to. Accountability is you being honest about the fact that you don't want to, or you don't have capacity, or you don't have desire. Four of Cups, somebody who is so, it's like a discomfort with moving forward. You don't want to do shit. When the Four of Cups comes up, you don't want to do it, right? So what I'm seeing here is that Spirit is saying, rather than making yourself seem more sick, more weak than what you actually are, in order to get out of constantly being put in a position of helping people, just get used to saying, look, I don't want to. Just get used to saying no and I don't want to. That's how you can be accountable. And that's how you can show up in a way that is authentic, as opposed to having to perform weaponized incompetence. Okay? I hope that made sense. Again, I don't see any questions from anyone else, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for the evening. I didn't expect to have the biggest turnout, again, because we're doing this on a Friday and we typically meet on Thursday. Next week, we will be back to the Thursday schedule. So hopefully I'll see you all then. In the meantime, please watch this in the replay. I think the conversation is important and it's a good one. I will be back here Sunday for the weekly energy reading. I want you all to take really good care of yourself. And until next time, see you later. Take care. Bye.